Summer 1980. My first motorcycle, a brand new Suzuki DS 185, bought from the BMW Suzuki dealer in Manchester, New Hampshire, Cycle World. Here I am on the first day getting my new bike. Grandpa bought me a helmet the year before because I was riding out and around in the back of the neighborhood kids' bikes. Now I had my own to ride around with. I had a blast with that bike. Got to learn how to use a clutch and shift and maneuver a motorcycle and all those things, but it only lasted for about 3 weeks. The bike was stolen and involved in a police chase and seized up and crashed in an intersection and towed away, and the damages were as much as the bike cost when my parents bought it brand new 3 weeks earlier. So while they had it fixed, it was not until later that year before I got it back and wore it out pretty quick afterwards, and ended up on a brand new leftover 1980 Can-Am 250 Qualifier 3. Much more capable bike, of course, because that was a true enduro bike, where the Suzuki was just a trail bike / play bike. The Can-Am allowed me to refine my riding skills and meet a whole bunch of people, enter some competitions. I even let my little friend down the street there use my bike. He didn't have a bike, so he used mine for the junior ice racing and won a champion at one of the races. I had an MX6B 125 and then this MX6B 400, which was used quite a bit, and that became sort of a super motard at the end of its life with me. And I used it to get back and forth to work when I had my first job at the tire plant as a kid. And then, a few years later, I was ready for a street bike, and I really was ready for a BMW. And BMW had just come out with the 88 K100 RS Special Edition with anti-lock brakes. That four-cylinder engine was much more appealing to me than that stodgy old twin. This K-bike was modern and really appealing. So I told Cycle World I wanted one. Call me when it comes in. I was approved for financing and all of that, and just went on for a year. They never called me. Finally, the next year, I said, screw it. I bought a brand new 1989 Harley Davidson XL 1200 Sportster. I rode that bike quite a bit. I put 32,000 miles on that Sportster in 2 years. The dealer used to have me bring it in to show off to people that didn't believe Sportsters could go that far. But one day while I was out on a ride, I went by a BMW dealership that I didn't even know existed, one out in western New Hampshire. And sitting there in their display window while they were closed, this red and yellow K1. I had never seen a BMW like that before. So I pressed my face against the window and drooled for a little while and rode away with all kinds of thoughts about getting rid of my Harley and getting onto a real machine that I could comfortably accumulate a lot of miles on. Sportster was rough. I did a 600-mile day on that bike once, and that was the record. I don't think the body can handle much more than that. The K1, better brakes, more power than that 88 K100 RS, because this had 4 valves per cylinder as opposed to 2. And then, of course, the aerodynamics were incredible. This K1 had aerodynamics rivaling that 1984 Pontiac Trans Am, which had a drag coefficient of next to nothing. This was pretty incredible. So I went back to the dealer when they were open, and they drooled over my Sportster while I took the K1 out for a nice test ride and came back. And they offered me an incredible amount of money, more than I expected, and knocked a whole bunch of money off the K1 because it was a demo with a couple miles on it. Deal was made. I ride home on my new K1. I get to blast around New England for a few months. And winter approaches, and a friend of mine who had moved to Florida invites me to Florida, which coincides with one of my jobs, saying, all is well, get lost for a little bit, and off I go. Leave after a snowstorm to arrive in Florida, heaven's waiting room. The land of the cheesy postcards. I got to hang around in Florida, bumbled into the BMW dealership, BMW Daytona, helped out down there, went down to the Space Center a bunch of times, saw a space shuttle launch, a bunch of parts here, and it wasn't one that blew up. Good to see, Florida, you get to see farm animals. Kind of funny seeing farm animals in Florida, cows and pigs and all of that stuff. And did a few things for a couple departments while I was down there, but that really wasn't my thing. And Florida wasn't really much for riding. It's flat. So as much time as I could, I spent around my other passion, aircraft. And that B-17 is not around anymore. B-24 is still here. This was nice. Florida is a land of aviation, so I was lucky to run into some people with airplane projects going on. Was able to get my hands dirty and squirt some paint on a few aircraft and things, and helped out at the dealership because Bike Week was coming. So busy there, and they gave me a discount on a leather riding suit and threw me a few bucks for helping out. And I met the colonel and this guy Rick. And Rick and I had K1s, and the colonel had an FJ 1200, but not for long. The colonel got himself a brand new black BMW K1. He was so impressed with the performance of our machines, he got one for himself. So the three of us rode off, headed to Dothan, Alabama, Fort Rucker, where the colonel was going to show us his creation, the simulators at Fort Rucker. Colonel built armor simulators, computer simulators. So that was our journey, and these are some of the pictures from that trip. There's Rick and the colonel in front of a B-17 and in front of a B-52. Colonel and I in front of a B-52. There's me in front of an SR-71. And Rick and I under this huge helo. I had a blast with these guys. I went back to Florida, told my friends in blue, go pound sand. It's been fun. It ain't been that much fun. Strapped on my brand new RKA tank bag that I bought during Bike Week. It finally arrived. They shipped to me. Strapped it on the bike and headed west. Arrived in Texas right as Rick was getting ready to go for work. So he's leaving for work. Said, go through the fence, make yourself comfortable. Watch. Don't mind the dog. Freaking dog's coming at me at the time with a car tire by the tread. These photos, they're just playing with motorcycle tires. Zeus and Hannah, great dogs. Rick and I were off the next morning with deputy chief and captain and a whole entourage of motorhomes with trailers and pickup trucks with campers, and headed to Big Bend National Park. Here we are over the Pecos and Rio Grande, and there's one of the entourage crossing the bridge. These roads were great. You got to twist the throttle and just run wide open. Beer drinking goat right there. You could run the K1 at maximum speed out here. Maximum speed, 167 BMW miles per hour. Rick's went 162 BMW miles per hour. Tales about that will come in a different episode. Here's Rick headed off to work again after we get back from Big Bend, so I get to bumble around Rick's body shop, and that was his Sportster. Send a postcard back to home. I get to fix some road chips and things on the K1 and the side panel, because the damn K1s fall off the center stand. They just right leg punches right through the soft asphalt and they tip over. Not a problem in the Southwest where they use really big stones in their asphalt, but up in New England, that stuff, the asphalt here is so soft, punch right through. Here's Rick cooking along down the highway. We went to East Texas Hill Country and got to ride around there several times. Some nice twisty, hilly roads. Nice break from Florida. Here's Rick and the Colonel. And Rick taking a picture of me while I'm taking a picture of Rick. Here we have a little modified road sign. I think this is one of the times we got stopped and the police decided to become ghosts right after they saw our identification. There's a lunch break. There's a Colonel right looking back wondering what the fuck Rick and I are doing. Here we are getting lunch. And that's a World War II PBM Mariner and a postcard back to my grandparents. We were visiting the Chester Nimitz Museum. And there's Rick. I'm standing next to the conning tower of a U.S. sub. Lukenbach, Texas. And then I headed to Colorado to visit my friend, and the whole Colorado story will be a different segment. There's Rick saying goodbye as I go back to New Hampshire and spend a couple months at home. I prepare to attend Reg Pridmore's class, his motorcycle school, safety school, which is held on the racetrack, being held at that time at New Hampshire International Speedway. And feeling confident and excited because I had just covered quite a bit of mileage at top speed around Texas for a couple of months, and was anxious to get on the track, and had a little bet that the shop's R80 that was all hopped up was gonna beat my K1. There's the R80 behind my K1, and that's where it was all day. Reg Pridmore's guys chased me down. They had never seen anybody throw a K1 around that well before. And that was a great time. Got my certificate. Reg had worked out a deal with Edelweiss Tours for a European tour, which coincidentally I was thinking about a domestic tour, taking people to one of my favorite places, Old Rhinebeck Aerodrome. Here, a postcard from an old friend back in 1979. I visited Old Rhinebeck as often as I could. It's kind of a home away from home for me. A great passion for World War I planes, and decided to be a good place for the Colonel and Rick to meet when they came to visit. Here is a Fokker triplane replica that was crashed by none other than the pilot who did the flying for the first Top Gun movie. Luckily, it wasn't this more genuine replica that Cole built many, many, many years ago. There's a Fokker D8 and a D7, some of which had a BMW engine, the BMW 3A. Here's an Albatross, which is certainly the most numerous of German World War I fighter aircraft. So the Colonel and Rick met me at Rhinebeck. We saw a great show. Here we are with my friend Mike on his K100 RT. The Colonel's on his Harley, which kind of pissed Rick off. Here's the brochure I had from my tour, and here are the last two pictures of my K1 before it was crashed one evening in a minor low-speed slide and totaled. Despite my pleas to the bike shop not to total my bike, I got a call from the insurance company. They had written it off. I was depressed. That tour was coming up in a week, and here I am with no bike. So they were able to put me on a 92 K100 RS, which is really the same bike for the drivetrain minus the gearing, but it wasn't the same bike to me. So this began a love-hate relationship. And the Colonel called me and invited me to go to work for him and set up a tour company of his own. And I couldn't pass that up. So I left in mid-November to meet him in Texas. On my way, I stopped in Florida. I visited my friends for a few days in Spruce Creek outside of Daytona. Here's my K12 RS all striped up and reflective. And here, My friends Paul and Shirley and I are waving goodbye to John Travolta in his Gulfstream as he's ready to depart.